Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome
Yeah.
to the deep dive. We take complex ideas, distill them down, give you those essential insights. Basically a shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today we're embarking on, well, a truly profound journey. We're looking into a spiritual classic, H.P. Blavatsky's The Voice of the Silence.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just, a book. It's presented as a guide to inner transformation, originally meant for people really serious about human betterment, about deep spiritual growth.
Yeah, and what's fascinating right away is how it's presented. It claims to be a direct translation, from memory no less, of these ancient maxims. They're drawn from something called the Book of the Golden Precepts.
Okay.
And these aren't just random teachings. They supposedly come from the exact same archaic source as the stanzas of Jain, which, for context, that's what formed the basis for Blavatsky's huge work, The Secret Doctrine. So it positions this text as something really foundational, some core esoteric wisdom.
Right. So our mission today is to explore this spiritual classic of incomparable beauty and power. We want to understand its mysterious origins, its core teachings, and figure out what it really means to listen to that elusive voice of the silence. And you might be surprised, actually, by how powerfully this ancient wisdom speaks to navigating our own complex modern world. So let's start right at the beginning. Who exactly was H.P. Blavatsky writing for when she put this text together? What was her purpose?
Well, the sources say Blavatsky primarily focused on the needs of those who were seriously desirous of serving the cause of human betterment. So the book's core intention really was to shine a light on a crucial distinction, a distinction between two spiritual paths.
Two paths.
Yeah, one path focused purely on self-enlightenment, getting your own liberation, and another, much harder path, driven by this profound, compassionate concern for all of humanity. It's a very significant distinction. Kind of underpins the whole thing.
Okay, that's interesting. And where do these teachings themselves actually come from? You mentioned the Book of the Golden Precepts. Sounds ancient, almost secret.
It does. These precepts are described as being traditionally put into the hands of mystic students in the East. Knowing them was apparently obligatory in that school that was accepted by Theosophists.
Theosophists.
Yeah, that body of teachings trying to synthesize world wisdom traditions. Blavatsky herself actually said she knew many of these precepts by heart. Suggests a really deep personal connection. And the sources add another layer. They say that while, methods of psychic development might have varied across Indian gurus, once you went beyond the Himalayas into the esoteric schools, the fundamental method didn't really differ that much, which points towards some kind of consistent, maybe universal esoteric tradition.
Okay, this next detail really caught my eye. How these precepts were recorded and transmitted. It hints at a truly universal language, almost secret. How did that work?
Yeah, this is fascinating. Apparently, they were originally engraved on thin, oblong squares, sometimes copied onto discs, often kept safe on altars. And this is where the Senzar language comes in. It wasn't just spoken, apparently.
How so?
It could be rendered in cipher characters, or even using things like numerals and colors to form cryptographic alphabets. Really intricate stuff.
Wow. So it's not just about what's said, but how it's conveyed. That idea that the signs and symbols were, like the Arabian numerals or figures, common and international property among initiated mystics. It's just wild. It suggests that the Japanese initiate could read these truths in their own way, just as easily as a Chinese initiate could in theirs.
Exactly.
That points to some common ground for understanding deep spiritual truths that just goes beyond culture, beyond spoken language, almost like a shared psychic grammar. Makes you wonder if the deepest insights are truly universal, just expressed differently but fundamentally the same.
Precisely. It points towards a knowledge that isn't tied to any single spoken tongue, but maybe more to an intuitive grasp of core principles, like a blueprint of reality, almost. Now, given how fundamental these precepts are described, it does make you wonder why Blavatsky only translated a selection. There were supposedly 90 treatises.
Yeah, that is a great question. What was her reasoning? Did she think the world just wasn't ready for all of it?
That seems to be the gist. She states pretty explicitly that the world was too selfish and too much attached to objects of sense to be in any way prepared to receive such exalted ethics in the right spirit. Basically, you had to be serious. You had to persevere seriously in the pursuit of self-knowledge to even begin to absorb this kind of deep advice. It wasn't, for the casual browser.
That makes a certain kind of sense. It definitely echoes things you find in other Eastern works, like the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita. The source even links them directly, like Krishna telling Arjuna to kill out all desire of life, or destroy the sense of separateness. I mean, those are pretty radical ideas, especially for a modern audience.
Absolutely. Very challenging concepts.
So, okay, we've explored the ancient origins. Let's step into the first big challenge the book presents, Fragment 1. It starts with this incredibly powerful, almost confrontational line. The mind is the great slayer of the real. Let the disciples slay the slayer. I mean,
Yeah.
wow, that's profound and frankly, a bit unsettling, isn't it? Most of us are taught to trust our minds, to hear it called the slayer of the real that forces a total rethink. What does this mean for us, listening now, navigating our own minds?
It is fundamental, and yes, it totally challenges our default settings. When Blavatsky writes that the mind is the great slayer of the real, she isn't saying our brains are inherently bad. Not at all. She's offering a deep insight. It's our uncontrolled thoughts, that endless internal chatter, our attachment to fleeting perceptions, to illusions. That's the biggest obstacle to seeing what's truly real.
Okay.
So the ultimate freedom, then, is mastering that inner noise, gaining a kind of indifference to mere external perception, and ultimately transcending Mahamaya.
Mahamaya, the great illusion.
Exactly. The illusion of our objective material universe. It's about seeing beyond that veil.
All right. The text then describes this progression, moving through 3 halls on the journey. Can you walk us through those, and what are the dangers lurking there?
Certainly. The first hall is the hall of ignorance. That's avidya. It's basically our everyday phenomenal world, the world of the senses, full of attachments, illusions, our default reality.
Got it.
The second is the hall of learning. It's also called the probationary hall. Now, this is described as the astral region, the psychic world of supersensuous perceptions and of deceptive sights. Crucially, it's still part of the great illusion. It's a place where the text warns very poetically that no blossom plucked has ever yet been brought down on earth without its serpent coiled around the stem.
Yeah. So even when you're gaining knowledge, gaining psychic perception perhaps, there's still serious dangers. It sounds like spiritual progress itself brings its own unique pitfalls. What about this great heresy of separateness the text warns about? Why is avoiding that so critical?
Ah, yes. That's a vital point. The great heresy is this subtle but incredibly deep illusion. The belief that your individual soul or self is truly distinct and separate from the one universal infinite self.
The ego's last stand, maybe?
You could say that. Even on the spiritual path, it prevents true liberation. You absolutely must dissolve that sense of me versus everything else. Then the third and final hall is the hall of wisdom. This is described as the region of the full spiritual consciousness. This is where true safety, true liberation lies. But the text warns, flee from the hall of learning once its purpose is served. Don't get stuck there, lest your soul gets caught in its deceptive light and falls for that great heresy.
This sounds incredibly intense. The text also mentions a fiery power, and hearing the voice of thy inner God in 7 different ways. What's that about?
Yeah, that refers to Kundalini. It's understood as this deeply powerful, normally dormant spiritual energy within us. Think of it less like a literal force, maybe, and more like a profound inner potential. A creative power that, when it's awakened, can be incredibly transformative, incredibly creative. But it demands immense inner discipline. It can be quite destabilizing if it's not managed correctly. And the 7 mystic sounds, they range from a nightingale song to a thundercloud. These are described as internal experiences, things the ascetic hears inwardly at the start of their meditation cycle.
Okay.
These internal perceptions get more and more refined until you reach the 7th sound, which, the text says, swallows all the other sounds. It signifies this dissolution into a state of profound unity, beyond all separate perceptions.
So what does this all mean for the actual transformation of the individual? How do you, do this? How do you move through these stages?
Well, it's fundamentally about profound self-mastery and a complete identification with the journey itself. The source says, quite powerfully, thou canst not travel on the path before thou hast become that path itself.
Become the path.
Yeah. It highlights this merging. The traveler and the journey become one. Practically speaking, it calls for transcending our more temporary, ego-driven aspects, our fleeting desires, emotional attachments, even what the text calls the lower astral consciousness. It talks about destroying the lunar body, which is the astral form, and cleansing the mind body. It's all about purifying and elevating your awareness towards a higher, more essential spiritual self.
Sounds like serious inner work.
Oh, absolutely. It's a rigorous process. It culminates through stages like dharana, that's intense concentration, then dhyana, deep meditation, and ultimately samadhi.
Samadhi.
Where individual consciousness just dissolves, becomes one with the all. The practitioner literally becomes, as the text puts it, light in the sound and the sound in the light.
Wow. Okay, so having grasped that inner battle, Fragment 2 presents this fundamental choice. the two paths. This sounds like a really critical crossroads, a defining moment.
It absolutely is. The source outlines two schools, essentially, stemming from Buddha's doctrine. There's the exoteric, known as the I doctrine, and the esoteric, the heart doctrine. The I doctrine is described as being for the general crowd. It's focused on head learning.
Head learning, like intellectual knowledge.
Exactly. Acquiring facts, concepts, saying, behold, I know.
Okay. And the heart doctrine. How's that different?
That's presented as being reserved for the elect, for those who in humbleness have garnered, lo confess, thus have I heard. It's not about knowing, it's about hearing, receiving wisdom. It's about soul wisdom, the kind that truly illuminates and guides you from within. Stands in stark contrast to what the text calls the worthless husks of mere false learning intellectual stuff that karma eventually just grinds away. It's experiential wisdom, deep insight, not just collected facts.
Right. So what's the core difference in their approach to compassion, to action, especially when it comes to, the ultimate goal, liberation?
This is key. The open path, which aligns more with the I doctrine, it leads to what the text calls selfish bliss, a quicker nirvana.
Quicker sounds good, but selfish.
Well, the text describes this as the nirvana of destruction. Why? Because it stops rebirth, but it also kills compassion. Those who attain what's called dharmakaya glory on this path, they no longer can help man's salvation. They're effectively beyond earthly influence, beyond connection.
So it's ultimate personal freedom, maybe, but it also means severing that connection to suffering humanity.
Precisely. It's a path of complete release for the self.
That's a powerful contrast. So this must be where the secret path comes in, the one the text calls the path of woe. What motivates someone to choose that harder route?
Exactly right. This path, the secret path, is selected by the Buddhas of perfection, who sacrificed the self to weaker selves. It's explicitly a path of sacrifice. It leads, the text says, to mental woe unspeakable, especially for the living dead, meaning those still ignorant of these deeper esoteric truths. And it evokes this deep, helpless pity for the man of karmic sorrow.
So the bodhisattvas, they choose this.
Yes, the bodhisattvas of the secret heart. They choose to renounce nirvana's bliss, specifically to stay and help mankind. They don in the nirmanakaya's humble robe, which means they forego that eternal bliss for themselves. They remain invisibly, in spirit so to speak, in the world and contribute toward man's salvation. Gautama Buddha himself is cited as an example of such a nirmanakaya choosing to stay connected out of immense compassion.
So what we're really looking at here is this fundamental choice. You can have immediate personal liberation, or you can choose this prolonged, incredibly challenging commitment to universal compassion. It completely flips our usual understanding of success on its head, doesn't it? Most spiritual paths seem to emphasize individual enlightenment, but this text argues for something much more selfless.
Absolutely. And the text doesn't pull any punches, presenting this as a difficult, almost agonizing choice for the advanced seeker. It says, sweet are the fruits of rest and liberation for the sake of self, but sweeter still the fruits of long and bitter duty, renunciation for the sake of others, of suffering fellow men.
Sweeter still, wow.
It's about acting for others today, so they might eventually act for you tomorrow. Not really in a transactional way, but as part of this continuous flow of compassionate action. It's a stark reminder that true spiritual growth, at least in this tradition, isn't always about personal comfort or getting quick results. Sometimes it really is about enduring that mental woe unspeakable for the greater good.
Yeah, that's a truly humbling concept. It challenges our everyday ideas of what success even means on any path, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so once this profound choice between the two paths is made, the journey presses on. It continues through what the text calls the 7 portals. What are these portals, and what are the golden keys needed to get through them?
Right, the 7 portals. These represent major internal barriers. They're described pretty vividly as 7 strongholds held by cruel, crafty powers, passions incarnate. So these are the inner foes you absolutely have to conquer.
Inner foes, okay. And the keys?
The golden keys to unlock and pass through these gates are the paramitas. These are the transcendental virtues. There are 7. Dana, which is charity, boundless love really. Shila, harmony, ethical conduct. Shanti, patience, the ability to endure. Viraj, indifference to pleasure and pain.
Indifference, that sounds tough.
It is. Then virya, dauntless energy, spiritual vigor. Dhyana, profound meditation. And finally, praja, wisdom. A wisdom so profound it's said to make a person godlike.
That path sounds incredibly challenging, full of these internal battles. What are some specific pitfalls the text warns about as you try to navigate these gates?
Well, for instance, at the second gate, sila, harmony, there's the danger of fear that spreadeth, between the moonlight of thy soul and thy great goal. It's that fear of losing what you've gained, maybe, or just fear of the unknown ahead. At the third gate, kshanti, patience, fear actually rusts the key, meaning fear erodes your ability to persevere, to endure. And the fourth gate, viraj, indifference, that's called the portal of temptations. Here, even the slightest breeze of passion or desire can stir the inner light, basically pulling you back into the illusions of the senses. So these aren't external monsters, you see. They're internal seductions, deep-seated fears that arise precisely because you're making progress.
So how do you conquer these inner foes? The text seems to offer very direct, almost stark advice.
It really does. It says things like, kill thy desires, strangle thy sins, silence thy thoughts, and very importantly, merge into one sense thy senses.
Merge senses. Kill desires. It sounds drastic.
It's not meant literally as self-harm, of course. It's about a radical suppression of those egoic impulses, those sensory attachments that keep us bound. And perhaps the most striking advice is, thou hast to feel thyself all thought, and yet exile all thoughts from out thy soul.
Feel yourself all thought? But exile thoughts. How does that work?
It's a profound paradox, isn't it? It seems to point towards transcending your individual thinking process to experience a kind of universal consciousness, while simultaneously freeing yourself from the clutter of your own personal thoughts and worries. It's about ultimate mental discipline and liberation.
It sounds almost impossible. Yet the text also seems to offer some hope, some encouragement for those who inevitably stumble on this path.
Oh, absolutely. And this is important. You're reminded that each failure is success and each sincere attempt wins its reward in time. It speaks of the holy germs within the soul, those seeds of our spiritual potential. It says that they bend like reeds but never break.
That's beautiful.
It is. It's a message of persistent effort, yes, but also forgiveness for setbacks. It emphasizes the resilience of that true spiritual aspiration deep inside us.
Okay, so what happens then? When a pilgrim finally gets through that seventh gate, what's the ultimate reward for enduring such a demanding path?
At that point, the text says, a master has arisen, a master of the day. This person is described as holding life and death in his strong hand. It implies this profound control over one's own existence, immense spiritual insight and power. This living power, it says, can raise the tabernacle of illusion high above the gods. It's immense attainment.
But I sense a but coming.
There is. The text immediately reminds us, these incredible gifts, these powers, they are not for self. All that hard-earned knowledge must be poured forth into another bed.
Forth, meaning?
Meaning it must be used to sweeten the ocean's bitter waves, that mighty sea of sorrow formed of the tears of men. It has to be used for the benefit of all.
So the path culminates, not in personal triumph or some isolated state of bliss, but in becoming, like a fixed star in highest heaven that shines for everyone, or like pure snow in mountain veils that shields the earth, even if you're unseen, unthanked.
Exactly. This selfless act is what builds what the text calls the guardian wall, a kind of invisible protection, shielding mankind from far greater misery and sorrow. It's a truly humbling yet incredibly powerful vision of ultimate service.
Wow. What a journey we've taken today, diving into the voice of the silence. From its ancient, almost universal origins in that book of the Golden Precepts, through the really deep inner battle of slaying the mind, traversing those three halls, then that critical choice between the two paths, personal freedom versus endless compassion, and finally, that incredibly arduous ascent through the seven portals.
Yeah, we've seen how this text lays out this incredibly rigorous process of self-transformation. But the goal isn't isolated bliss. It's not individual glory. It's aimed at this profound act of serving humanity, often invisibly, as a kind of savior of the world. It's really a call to action, but one deeply rooted in that intense inner work.
It's definitely a deep dive that makes you think, really makes you consider how knowledge, suffering, and compassion all intertwine in this extraordinary quest for spiritual mastery.
And the text, it ultimately concludes quite simply, you are enlightened, choose your way.
Choose your way. So to you, our listener, we'll leave you with this thought to chew on. Given this profound choice presented by these ancient teachings, between a path to swift personal peace, that long, hard path of sustained compassion for others, what unseen guardian walls might already be shaping your own journey, even if you aren't consciously building them? And maybe, what might it mean for you to consciously step into that role, even in the smallest way, right where you are in your own life? That's our deep dive for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really hope you'll continue to explore and question.